Hello and welcome. You're watching Race to Power. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and on the show today, the American top court has agreed to hear arguments over Donald Trump's bid to broadly enforce his executive order to restrict automatic birthright citizenship. But amid the ongoing lawsuits against the administration, Trump is also questioning the authority that the judges have to curtail the presidential powers. And Pakistani Foreign Secretary Amna Baloch meets with Bangladesh's interim head Mohammad Yunus as part of a two-day visit to the country, where Dhaka is seeking an apology and also a compensation from Islamabad for the 1971 war. But let's of course start with a big story that's from the United States of America, where America's executive and judiciary are at loggerheads over the scope and the extent of their authority. At the foundation of this rift is the legal roadblock that Trump's numerous executive orders are facing. The U.S. top court has agreed to hear arguments over Donald Trump's bid to broadly enforce his executive order to restrict automatic birthright citizenship. The Supreme Court hearing will take place next month on this Trump order that is a key pillar of the Republican president's hardline approach to immigration and citizenship. Now, Trump's order, signed off on his first day back in office, directed federal agencies to refuse to recognize the citizenship of children born in the United States of America who do not have at least one parent who is an American citizen or a lawful permanent resident of the United States. Now, speaking to the media on Thursday, the Republican leader said that the case is actually an easy win.
If you look at the details of it, the signings of it, everything else, that case is all about slavery. And if you view it from that standpoint, people understand it. But for some reason, lawyers don't talk about it. The news doesn't talk about it. That's not about tourists coming in and touching a piece of sand and all of a sudden they're a citizenship. They're a citizen. That is all about slavery. And even look at the dates on which it was signed. It was right at that era, right after the Civil War. And if you look at it that way, the case is an easy case to win.
Now, the American president cited the law's age-old origin as the need to push for some sweeping reforms. However, when it comes to deportation, Donald Trump himself has invoked the Alien Enemies Act, a legislation way back from 1798. And the act allows the power to the president to detain or to deport nationals of an enemy nation during wartime. The last time an American president had used this act was during the Second World War. The administration's immigration crackdown also faces several lawsuits. But when it comes to his deportation program, Trump has raised questions on the authority that judges have to overrule a president's executive order.
I was elected to get rid of those criminals, to get them out of our country, or to put them away, but to get them out of our country. And I don't see how judges can take that authority away from a president. We've done an amazing job, Tom Holman.
The Trump administration already finds itself in the crosshairs of a federal judge that has warned the White House of contempt of court after the authorities failed to stop a plane carrying 200 immigrants even after the judge ordered a halt. The standoff between Donald Trump and America's biggest universities has escalated after the American president decided to freeze $2.2 billion worth of funding to Harvard University and is also considering to revoke its tax exemption status.
Why are you considering changing the tax status of Harvard?
Because I think Harvard's a disgrace. I think what they did was a disgrace. They're obviously anti-Semitic, and all of a sudden they're starting to behave.
But Trump's move has triggered a fresh wave of nationwide protests in support of Harvard and other universities likely to face action as well.
We want them back! We want them back! When higher education is under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back! When our universities are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back!
He's trying to destroy everything good about this country. He's trying to tear down everything that our history and the best aspects of our political system have left us with. He's trying to destroy the legacy of America. He doesn't understand it. He doesn't understand America.
The students, teachers, lawyers and citizens in fact took to the streets in several states protesting against Donald Trump's education cuts. And more recently, the action taken against top universities accusing the administration for cracking down on academic freedom and constitutional rights.
We wanted to show that Harvard can stand together, united, saying we're not going to cave to demands that we turn in some international student names so that they can be have their visas revoked without a just cause, and they can be deported back to their home countries, and that instead we're going to stand together as a university, as Harvard College, saying that, look, we're not doing anything for you, and we're going to stand behind freedom.
We've seen Harvard fighting back, MIT, Stanford is stepping up. I think the tide is starting to turn. And we're seeing positive signs that people aren't going to accept this attack on higher ed.
If there's one thing that we are all committed to, it is the safety of our students, and that we will not allow them to be picked off. We will not let them be threatened for exercising their First Amendment rights. And we certainly won't sit by while there's political litmus tests applied to them that potentially puts them in real harm's way.
I'm part of the America that has always fought back and always pushed forward and always said we will not let this happen while we're on our watch. And I want to thank all the leaders of the institutions of higher learning coming forward and say, you will not erase history.
Now, the standoff began when the White House issued a list of orders to Harvard that came as a follow-up to the administration's criticism of how the universities across the United States have handled the pro-Palestinian student protest movement last year. And not just Harvard, the government's anti-Semitic task force has also identified at least about 60 American top universities for review. All right, now to give us more perspective on this, we are joined in this broadcast by Mr. Eugene Craig, who's a former vice chair of Maryland Republican Party, and he's also joining us on this broadcast live. Mr. Craig, thank you very much indeed for taking time out and speaking with us here in WION. And let me actually start off by asking you this. Donald Trump is in fact taking on the case, the issue of automatic birthright citizenship, and he wants to fight it out in the Supreme Court, and he claimed that it is going to be an easy win. Why does the American president want to overturn automatic birthright citizenship?
I mean, look, the thing is this, right? The president surrounded himself by racists, by people that have for their entire careers worked to either limit the progress of people of color, whether that be Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Indian Americans, Asian Americans. And you know, President Trump, you know, cut his teeth. President Trump had his rise on the back of the like of Ted Cruz and Steve King, who, you know, pretty much built their careers on white grievance politics. So, you know, they're one of their like crowns, jewels is doing away with birthright citizenship. And, you know, I actually think it's going to be an easy case in the other direction. Right. Because the thing is this, the United States Constitution has been what it's been for the last 200 years. And then, you know, it's also been reaffirmed by multiple other acts of Congress, the right of birthright citizenship in the United States, which is different than almost every other country in the world.
Interesting. Now, the Trump administration is also cracking down on the American universities. Trump, in fact, is singling out the Harvard University after cutting down funding. He's accusing Harvard of being a disgrace and of being anti-Semitic. How do statements like this resonate with the American public, considering the reputation that the Harvard University has, not just within the United States, but indeed around the world?
I mean, look, the thing is, none of these universities are anti-Semitic. If that was the case, they wouldn't have the broad Semitic, broad Semitic support that they have, whether that's Jewish or Muslim or Arab, because the word Semitic is actually pretty broad than how it's typically applied. The thing is this, right? Team Trump is looking for any reason to bring these universities, these law firms, the media, all into submission, right? It's just fascism 101.
Right.
Vice President Harris during the campaign told us that this is what they would do. And so what is he doing? He's going after law firms and saying, hey, well, if you play by my rules, I'll leave you alone. He's going after the university and saying, hey, well, if you play by my rules, I'll leave you alone. And his rules aren't necessarily the law. America doesn't have a king. The United States doesn't have a king. We have a constitution, which is the ultimate authority when it comes to the law of the land.
Interesting. We'll have to see as to how these cases, of course, play out within the courts. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Eugene Craig, for joining us.
Appreciate it.
All right, now, Canada's top candidates in the running for this election have officially completed 2 customary rounds of debate. It's now over to the voters to decide as to who wins this very pivotal race after polling on the 28th of April. Now, 24 hours after their French debate, leaders of the 5 parties returned to stage on Thursday for the English debate. The top 2 political rivals of Canada's largest parties clashed over the country's dealing of the global crisis that was triggered by Trump's tariff war.
The relationship that we've had with the United States, relationship over the course of almost the last 4 decades, which has been one of steady and increasing integration, has fundamentally changed because the president is looking to fundamentally restructure the trading system. So the starting point has to be one of strength.
Mr. Carney, you claim that you want our country to respond with strength, but after the last decade, half of which time you've been Justin Trudeau's economic advisor, our economy is weaker than ever before. It's been the worst growth in the G7. We've lost $500 billion of investment south of the border. You supported blocking pipelines in Canada that gave Donald Trump and the U.S. a near monopoly over our energy.
The leaders also debated on other issues pertaining to Canada's stance on aid to Ukraine, a potential security crisis, and also spending cuts within the country. Now, many in Canada are worried about the increase in tariff rates will have a substantial impact on the common people at a time when the country is already grappling with a long-drawn cost of living crisis. While there are 5 parties in the running, the ruling Liberal Party and also the current opposition Conservative Party have a marginal difference in opinion polls. Now, early voting for this close contest will begin next week, with the final in-person voting day being on the 28th of April.
The sign would be brilliant. And yeah, you guys are hard at work. Before they start on Thursday. Now, Elections Canada.
Now, Pakistani Foreign Secretary Amna Baloch met with Bangladesh's interim head Mohammad Yunus at the beginning of a 2-day-long visit to the country. Amna Baloch is visiting Bangladesh for talks at a foreign secretary level, the first in over 15 long years. Now, Yunus's office said that he emphasized strengthening ties with Pakistan to boost mutual cooperation and also to explore trade and business potential. He said that there are certain hurdles between the 2 countries, but they'll have to find ways to overcome these and move forward. Now, before this meeting, the foreign ministry officials from Bangladesh's interim government and Pakistan held talks in Dhaka as the 2 South Asian Muslim-majority nations attempted to ease their strained relations. After the talks, Bangladesh's Foreign Secretary Jashimuddin said that Dhaka had raised some historically unsettled issues with Pakistan, including that of a formal apology for atrocities that were allegedly committed by the Pakistani troops in the 1971 War of Independence for Bangladesh.
I raised the historically unresolved issues with Pakistan, such as the repatriation of stranded Pakistanis, Bangladesh's rightful share in undivided assets, the transfer of foreign aid sent for the victims of the 1970 cyclone, and a formal apology for the genocide committed by the then armed forces of Pakistan in 1971.
The local media reported earlier that Yunus's government was preparing to formally raise its demand for about $4.52 billion in terms of financial compensation from Pakistan as its share from the combined assets at the time of East and West Pakistan split in 1971. Jashimuddin said that the issue of compensation was raised in Thursday's meeting. Baloch further said that Bangladesh and Pakistan must find ways to harness the potential between the two countries as they have huge intra-regional markets to use. The last such consultation between the two countries was held in Islamabad in 2010, after Sheikh Hasina came to power in the 2008 election with a landslide victory. Later in the month, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar is scheduled to undertake his first ever 3-day high-level visit to Bangladesh. Now, earlier in January, a Pakistani delegation had visited Bangladesh and had signed a memorandum of understanding with the Bangladeshi counterpart. And we earlier spoke with Mr. Parvez Karim Abbasi, who is an assistant professor at the East West University of Dhaka. Listen to what he had to say.
Indicated that Bangladesh has raised several issues which it has rightly claimed as unresolved historical disputes. Number one is, and I think this is the most important one, is the formal apology for acts of genocide committed by the Pakistan Armed Forces and their collaborators. So the interim government, despite being alleged, despite allegations of, at least in some sections of the Indian media, is that being very close to Pakistan, this in itself shows that, again, it is doing its bit to, again, show that it is also honoring the legacy of 1971, and it's also sensitive to the majority of the people's perception about what had happened in 1971. So that is not resolved yet. And it's important that this should be raised. And also the second one is also, this is very interesting, a $4.52 billion compensation that has been asked. And again, this after careful calculation is because all the amount of outstanding foreign aid that East Pakistan used to get, because Bangladesh used to be East Pakistan from 1947 to 1971, the unpaid provident funds, the savings instruments, and $200 million worth of loan given by international donors for 1970 cyclone. And let us not forget that from the late 1940s to all the way to mid-1960s, the main export revenue of all of Pakistan was jute earning, which came completely from East Pakistan or present-day Bangladesh. So Bangladesh asking for its due share of the unresolved proceeds.
In what is being termed as fierce criticism, Indian Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar has issued a very sharp rebuke to the Indian judiciary, saying that India cannot have a situation where the courts direct the president. Now, Dhankar's criticism comes in the wake of the Supreme Court ruling that sets a 3-month timeline for the president to decide on bills that have been referred by the governors of states to the president.
There is a directive to the president by a recent judgment. Where are we heading? What is happening in the country? We have to be extremely sensitive. It is not a question of someone filing a review or not. We never bargained for democracy for this day. President being called upon to decide in a time-bound manner, and if not, becomes law. So we have judges who will legislate, who will perform executive functions, who will act as super parliament, and absolutely have no accountability because law of the land does not apply to them.
On the 8th of April, the Supreme Court for the very first time had prescribed that the president should decide on the bills referred by the governor within a span of 3 months. It further said that in case of a delay beyond this period, then appropriate reasons will have to be recorded and conveyed to the state concerned. Now, in a landmark judgment, the court said that the president can in fact consult Apex Court before taking a call on the state bills. The Apex Court set the deadline of a month for governors to act on bills passed by the state assemblies. The Supreme Court cited Article 142 on the clearance of the bills pending with Tamil Nadu Governor R.N. Ravi. One of the bills had been pending approval since January 2020. Article 142 grants the Supreme Court the power to pass any order that is necessary to secure complete justice. However, Dhankar has called Article 142 a nuclear missile against democracy while addressing the Rajya Sabha interns at the Vice President's enclave on Thursday.
Article 142? Article 142 has become a nuclear missile against democratic forces. Available to judiciary 24/7. we have to believe in the nation. We have to believe in the power of we the people. And the power is reflected only through representatives. We have lost track.
The Vice President also spoke about the alleged cash haul from the home of the Delhi High Court Judge Yashwant Verma. Now, Dhankar has demanded answers from the Supreme Court-appointed three-judge panel investigating allegations of corruption. He's also raised some serious questions about the accountability of judges and the lack of FIR in the case. Now, the remarks by the Vice President has left the judiciary a little bit divided.
To my understanding, there should be a request to Honorable the Governor or Honorable the President, if so, to decide the matters as expeditiously possible. And mandating within a timeline which the Constitution does not take care of should have been avoided if possible.
Well, the government is entitled to bring the law, but at the same time, government is subject to scrutiny of the court. The refrain, which is now rather common, whether you hear the Vice President or you hear the Solicitor General addressing the court, in my opinion, is unwarranted. Mainly because the Parliament passes a law doesn't necessarily mean that by reason of its passage, it is exempt from scrutiny and it cannot be examined for its legality. Legality is in the realm of the court, and that jurisdiction is undisputed and undeniable.
The European Union is considering imposing some limits on exports to the United States in a potential response to President Trump's massive trade war. But that is only if the ongoing trade negotiations were to fail. Now, such retaliation by the EU would in fact mark a clear case of an escalation in an expanding trade dispute, as it could invite a forceful response from Washington. An export restriction is one of the several options that the EU is considering. Other possibilities include additional lists of tariffs and limiting public procurement for American companies. Now, typically, these type of restrictions target goods that are critical to the country, and that would be difficult to replace. Now, China earlier in the month had added at least 7 rare earths to its export control list. The United States has almost no processing ability for these rare earth minerals. The EU and the United States so far have made little progress in talks that are aimed at diffusing the conflict. According to the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Trump said that he was very confident of a deal with the EU.
Oh, there'll be a trade deal, 100%. Oh, well, you think there won't be? Of course there'll be a trade deal. Very much. They want to make one very much, and we're going to make a trade deal. I fully expect it, but it'll be a fair deal. Everybody's on my priority list.
Separately, the European Central Bank cut rates for the 7th time since last June as the trade tensions are threatening to derail the region's economic recovery.
The risks to economic growth remain tilted to the downside. An escalation in trade tensions would lower euro area growth by dampening exports and weakening the global economy. Ongoing uncertainty about global trade policies could drag investment down.
Now, there is growing tension between the International Criminal Court and one of its own member states, Hungary. Now, judges at the International Criminal Court, ICC, launched non-compliance proceedings against Hungary and demanded to know as to why it failed to arrest the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu during his visit to Budapest earlier in the month. Now, despite an active arrest warrant against his name for allegedly committing crimes against humanity and war crimes on the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Hungary, remember, instead of arresting Netanyahu, welcomed him with open arms and a red carpet. Now, the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban not only has defended the move, he's also announced Hungary would withdraw from the court entirely, accusing the ICC of being a political court and not a court of law. The court, however, has firmly rejected his argument, and critics have said that Orban is undermining the international justice system with his actions. Now, it's the third time in the past year that the court has investigated one of its member states for failing to arrest suspects. In February, the judges had asked Italy to explain as to why the country had sent a Libyan man suspected of torture and murder home on an Italian military aircraft rather than handing him over to the court. In 2024, the judges had reported Mongolia to the court's oversight organization for failing to arrest the Russian President Vladimir Putin when he had visited the nation. Hungary now has until the 23rd of May to explain its actions, or it could face further consequences. Now, Hungary's decision to leave the ICC, a process that will take at least about a year to complete, will make it the sole non-signatory within the 27-member European Union. With 125 current signatory nations, only the Philippines and Burundi have ever withdrawn from the court, as Hungary has said it wants to. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Race to Power. Thanks for watching.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Busting the myths around tokenization, catch me on Token Money Magnet, only on WION.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Welcome back. Thanks very much. You're watching WION World is One with me, Raisha Sehgal, and this is Fine Print. Lots planned for you on the show. Let's get you started with the headlines. Houthi vowed to hit back at intensifying U.S. raids, announcing they targeted 2 U.S. aircraft carriers, and Israel following the deadliest American strikes on Yemen in more than a year, which killed 74 people. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi cast doubt over the intentions of the United States of America. This a day before a second round of nuclear talks with Washington in Rome. Israel says to lead clear course of action to stop Iran acquiring nuclear arms. Kyiv says Russia fired a fresh volley of missiles and drones at Ukraine overnight, wounding dozens of people as the United States warned it could end efforts to broker a ceasefire if it did not see progress soon. China hits out at the US over US President Donald Trump administration's plan to impose massive fees on China-linked ship visits to American ports, calls it detrimental to all parties. US Vice President J.D. Vance meets with Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni in Rome. This ahead of celebrating Easter at the Vatican and a meeting with the Pope's right-hand man. Second seed Ben Shelton reaches the semi-final of the Munich Open after defeating Luciano Darderi in straight sets. The American will face Francesco Cerundolo in the last four. Christians in Jerusalem mark Good Friday with a procession along the Via Dolorosa in Old City. Retrace what they believe was the route Jesus Christ took to his crucifixion.